post this on my page. Live?
Ready.
Okay. It's connecting here. So this will be a fun little experiment to make sure that we're working here. Connecting, fetching video stream. Here we go. All right.
Okay.
So let me just make a quick note. Am I moving in your, oh no, it's not live yet.
I wish there was a way to minimize my. I keep looking down at me. Maybe there's. That's okay.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, it's asking me for all this stuff.
No worries.
Okay. Ready?
Ready.
Oh, wait, okay, we are live. Hi, everybody. I hope this is working. This is the first time that I've used this platform. I'm here with Coach Evan Burke. Actually, Evan, let me give you a quick intro to Evan. Evan has, spent, with the exception of the last couple of years, and we're going to talk some more about that, spent 12 years coaching at the collegiate level and also in the NFL. And he's now doing some really interesting work with esports and startups. He specializes in leadership training, and I thought it would be really cool to get him on to talk with him a little bit about his journey, kind of through coaching, kind of into his next level, and kind of where he is now, because I think there's a lot of really inspirational little nuggets that that I learned from listening to his journey, and I thought maybe people who were watching and on Facebook could also learn. So, did I leave anything out with regard to your introduction?
That was great. Thank you. And really excited to be talking with you today. This is exciting.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I know we talked about doing this, and we couldn't get our schedules to match up a couple of different times, so I'm glad it's working out.
We're ready to go now.
Yeah, so awesome. So I know that in your intro, I kind of alluded to your journey, kind of into coaching and then away from coaching and football. And so I would just love maybe if you would share a little bit more about kind of your path, your professional journey.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say my path in coaching really started my sophomore year at University of Colorado, where I went to school. Was just kind of looking for a little more than just kind of like the school social aspect. So had always been involved in sports and kind of missed that my freshman year. So started getting involved in youth sports coaching, just kind of like fourth grade, fifth grade basketball, soccer teams. That ended up leading me to coaching a fourth grade tackle football team, which eventually led me to coaching at the high school level in Boulder while I was still in college. So, it was really exciting, just to kind of be a part of teams again and getting the opportunity to coach, just something I kind of always, I guess, was inclined to do, even from an early age. And graduated and really spent that first year after graduation living in Boulder. Still had a bunch of friends there. was coaching, but I was working at the bagel shop down the street too. So I was kind of trying to like live out my dream of coaching and making bagels every morning at 5 a.m. as well. So that led me to kind of get into college coaching. And one of the interesting aspects of my journey is a lot of times coaches are either sons of coaches or former players that have a lot of connections in coaching. I didn't have this. And I can remember lots of coaches telling me early on, like, hey, getting into college is tough. You don't really have that background. You don't know a lot of people, which was true. Compared to probably 95+% of coaches, I didn't have a very similar background. But this is what I wanted to do, and I really just kind of wanted to go all in. So that first year after I had been living in Boulder after graduation, coaching high school, I'd sent out a bunch of letters, ended up getting an opportunity at SMU to coach there. And it was kind of interesting because the way that I got there was just I got in the door and I got a meeting with their director of football operations, and he brought me in and he kind of told me about this position they had, an operations assistant position. And, you're going to be up here every day. You're going to be monitoring study hall. And, oh my gosh, you're going to be passing out so many Chick-fil-A's you can't even imagine. And I just thought this was like the coolest sounding job for a 23-year-old. And having grown up in Dallas too, SMU would have just been like this dream situation. And so he informed me that they weren't hiring for this position, but they could be in the future. So I went back to Boulder and I kind of followed up with this coach every 2 to 3 weeks, just kind of giving him a call. Hey, this is Evan Burke from Boulder. We met a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, Evan. And just kept asking about this job. And they were always kind of putting me off, like they're doing something else. They're not hiring. And so ended up getting 2 other job opportunities. And this was the only coach I knew in Division I football. So went back to him, kind of, asked if they were still hiring. Evan, we're not even thinking about that. And just so I asked him, like, hey, can you help me? You're the only D1 coach I know. I want to coach in D1. I have a Division II coaching opportunity that is volunteer and high school opportunity that would pay me, I don't remember, like $30,000 at the time. And he told me if I wanted to be a college coach that I needed to take this volunteer coaching position. So I kind of said, Coach Hyatt, thank you so much for all your time. I look forward to keeping in touch with you, but you really made this decision easy. Thank you. And he was just like, hey, when are you coming back to Dallas? And I just happened to be coming back later on in that month. And he said, you should come by and see me. I showed up at the office. I thought I was just going to kind of chat with him and he was just going to show me around. And like an idiot, I showed up in like the dirtiest, most disgusting skater shoes. I had like cargo shorts. Like I was not dressed for an interview. And he walked me into the head coach's office and they were like, what goes on here stays here. And, you show up every day and you pass out those Chick-fil-A's. And I was kind of looking around wondering what was going on. And so ended up getting that position, and it was just a tremendous opportunity for me. I was living at my grandparents' pool house because, obviously you're not making any money. So it was just like a tremendous opportunity to kind of be back close to family at the same time, really pursuing my dream of coaching college football, and ended up being at SMU for 4 years. It was just a tremendous learning experience and really great for me personally, just being back so close to family. My brother and sister were like going through high school. So it was just really great for me on many levels. And in addition, was able to get my master's degree from SMU, which was just phenomenal. And that led me on kind of a path where I coached in the NFL. I coached for the Miami Dolphins. I came back to Texas to coach at McMurray University, and then came out here to Los Angeles, where I currently live, to work at UCLA in 2014. So that kind of encompassed 12 years of kind of going from 4th grade football to the NFL, back to college, and was just really blessed and fortunate with some of my opportunities.
Well, and I love that. And I love that, you recognize, like, with gratitude, your journey and things. But I think one of the really important things that you said that I want to really highlight, and this is something that I think is it sounds good when you hear other people do it, but when it's actually yourself, at least for me, I know that I've had a hard time with this sometimes. You caused yourself to continue to be persistent about getting your foot in the door. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that that piece of things is what got you in, right? Like if you would have not been persistent, if you let their no be a no and said, oh, I guess this isn't going to happen for me, then it wouldn't have, right? So like
Yeah.
your mindset around that, I think, is so key. And that's something that I wanted to just point out, and kind of listening to your story again. That was huge. And I know, personally, like when I'm told no, I don't like to keep coming back and being like, well, hey, it's Erica again, And so I know that that can be really hard. And so, the fact that you did that, and, that's one of the things that I also see as being like a common thread of highly successful people, is that they don't just stop at no.
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out and saying that. And I wish I could say that in the moment, my attitude was like, oh, I'm just going to be persistent. But it's just kind of funny. It was kind of like, well, I don't know anybody else. And this guy told me about this job, so I'm going to keep reaching out. And it's really interesting because a lot of the different opportunities I was given in my career kind of lended itself to the same kind of, I guess, strategy, for lack of a better term. And so, yes, not having play, not having, family that's in coaching or in football, I guess one of the things I'm really proud of is that my journey through coaching was really kind of a highlight in persistence and perseverance. So,
For sure.
yeah, so it was just, like I said, it was really great. Just to have all of those experiences. And again, a lot of it is kind of timing too, and being fortunate with who you get hooked up with too. And I'm very aware of that. And so, very, like you said earlier, just grateful for the way that my career was kind of laid out for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So kind of moving into the next level, like that was your kind of coaching journey. But then I know that you and I have talked about how you kind of woke up one day, or you realized at one point, like, I'm not sure that this is my path, or that this is for me anymore. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just when I was early on in coaching, I think I was probably 21 or 22, and it was like I knew that I wanted to be the head coach at Colorado. And that was kind of like my vision or my North Star. And it doesn't necessarily make life easy, but it definitely makes life simple if you're that goal oriented. And it was like every single move I made in my career was to get to this eventual mountaintop of being the head coach at Colorado. And it was really, I don't want to mean like all encompassing, like it was all thought about, but in terms of my career, that was what everything I did was geared towards. And so I was at UCLA. I'd been there for 2 seasons. I was working with the quarterbacks there, and I was fortunate to work with two really good quarterbacks while I was there, Brett Hundley and Josh Rosen, who are both in the NFL now. And I'm living in Santa Monica, and I'm working at UCLA, which is a fantastic school, but I just wasn't really that happy. And so it was kind of weird where everything was lining up exactly the way I would want it to in my career, but it just kind of, for me, just didn't feel right. And I distinctly remember I was somebody that always took meticulous notes, dating back to probably 2007, 2008. So I have like binders on binders on binders from every place I've been, everything from recruiting to practicing to, bi-week schedules, you name it, I've got it. And I just was somebody that always walked into every meeting like, oh, I can maybe get one morsel or one nugget of something I can use when I become the head coach at Colorado. That was like always my mentality. And I'll never forget November 2015. I'm at UCLA. Everybody's going into the team meeting room. And I remember this was the first time in my career I was sitting there and I was like, I don't think I want to go into this meeting. Like, I don't know if I care anymore. And that was the first time I'd ever had that feeling. And so it was very profound, like immediately. And I remember there was another coach in there at the time. We were both going through similar things where we had both sacrificed a lot to be put in the position we were in. And we were just kind of sitting there like, is this it? Like, are we happy? Is this the path we want to continue to go down? So I kind of knew in that moment, but I really knew kind of 3-4 weeks later that this was going to be kind of the end of my coaching career. And I just remember it wasn't so much that I was worried about myself. I was more worried about like my support system, like the people that had been there and supported me through all this, 12 years of moving all over the country. I was more worried about like telling them than making the actual decision. But I've been really fortunate in that sense, and my inner circle was just incredibly supportive and great. So that was kind of the end of my coaching career and kind of the end of my vision, so to speak.
Well, and I think the fact that you actually listened to that and you aren't like, well, I'm on this path, so I'm going to stay on it because I worked so hard to get here. I think that could be difficult. I know that 98% of the world kind of operates from a place as well. I chose this path, so now I'm on it.
Yes.
And, I love that kind of the teaching nugget, and then like what you're saying is like, you're never too far down a path to switch and go down a different one.
Right.
And that was your path for a certain time, but then you noticed and you realized like, maybe this isn't for me anymore.
Yeah. Maybe wish I would have figured it out 10 years sooner. But yeah, it was just like I didn't have the drive to be the head coach at Colorado anymore. And it's like once you become detached from that vision, it makes everything a lot more difficult because you are sacrificing a lot. You are going through adversity. You are spending a lot of time kind of pursuing this vision or going down this path. And if you become detached from that vision, it makes it very hard to get through that adversity or get through those tough times. And I would definitely say that was what led me through those, and I say tough times, but just like, it's hard, especially in something like football, which is very high performance business. If you're going to be in it, you better have some motivational factor because you're working sometimes 80 to 100 hours a week with no breaks, no opportunities to sleep in, no opportunities to have a day off. So, it can definitely be challenging. And the one thing I will say is I didn't quite realize the ramifications of leaving football. It was obviously something that I decided was not going to be my path anymore. And I made that decision in the moment, and I was like very confident in that decision. But it's been about a 3-year journey to get to where I am now. So I don't want to like play it off like that was easy. It was definitely after the fact. It was like, oh, okay, great. I've had one vision that has led me to every decision I've made in my career. And now I don't have that. And now what do I do? So that was all like, once I figured that out, that was a little terrifying for sure.
I'm sure. Well, and I appreciate you sharing that because, I think that's just human, especially when you realize like, wait, is this not happening for me anymore for whatever reason? I think for you were noticing like, okay, my vision is shifting. But even for like, you've talked about transition, and I know you and I have talked about transition in the past too, but like even for athletes who have had like their vision taken away, whether it be for an injury or, they don't get to the level that they are longing to get to or whatever, kind of that phase of, all right, well, what's next? And how do I like maintain my footing as I navigate this kind of?
Right.
So how did you do that? I know you mentioned it was kind of like a 3-year journey. But like kind of, you mentioned also kind of clarity of vision too. So I'd love to hear now about like your next level of vision, kind of like what you're seeing now and kind of work that you are doing now too, because I think that kind of one and the same.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so, the last 3 years have definitely been interesting. As I said, being detached from vision, not kind of having a direction, so to speak, was definitely challenging. So the first thing that I did when I left UCLA, it was like February, and I'd never seen Game of Thrones, and I never really had time off. I didn't watch TV shows for 12 years because I was working like 80, 100-hour weeks.
Yeah.
And so like I sat on the couch and watched like 5 seasons of Game of Thrones over like 2 weeks.
Nice.
It was very, very enjoyable, and we'll hold off comments on the current season that they're in. But but it was kind of like, okay, now what, right? Like now I have to go do something, and I had a vision I wanted to start a company really kind of geared around helping young athletes get that college opportunity. So helping them through the recruiting process, acting as a guide and as an advisor to families and athletes. So I started this company. I did this for about 6 months. And something that I thought I was super passionate about, it turns out that I wasn't that passionate about it. I still cared, but it wasn't like an all-encompassing, like, this is like my path moving forward. So I got an opportunity to work at a corporate company doing outside business to business sales. It was very lucrative, and, suffice it to say, coaching, if people aren't familiar, college coaching is really lucrative at the top, and everywhere else, it's really not that lucrative. You're really kind of grinding for the eventual realization of your vision. So this was a really interesting opportunity to like challenge myself and make money for the first time. Ultimately, it wasn't fit for me. So I started this business. In a way, I kind of not necessarily failed, but I guess you could say, I failed. It didn't take off. I did this sales job that I guess you could say I have skills for, but it wasn't a fit, and I wasn't necessarily great in that role. And so then in January 2017, I still really didn't know what to do. So as soon as I left the sales job, I went and traveled. I came back. I kind of did in all honesty, not like a full job search. I was probably 50% of this job search, and decided that I wasn't done traveling. So I went again to go travel. And the one thing I will say, me personally, I love to travel. I've been doing month-long trips for about, the last 7 or 8 years. I love just picking a place, never having been there and not having a plan, and just going and kind of like figuring it out, putting myself in uncomfortable situations. That really helps me. And so I think that these two kind of travels that I did really kind of helped me just kind of like get back in touch with what I really want, and just gave me time to think. I think sometimes, like when you're at your house or, you're in your home city, it's kind of like, you're like, oh, I have to do something. When you're traveling, you're outside your comfort zone. There's nothing to do. You're in the jungle in Colombia, like go on a hike and, take a nap and go coffee tasting, and like, don't worry about that. And I think that was very beneficial for me to do that and kind of to take that step away before I jump back into anything. So about a year ago, was introduced to an individual who had encouraged me to pursue esports or something in esports. And that's how I eventually landed kind of in the position that I'm in now, and kind of working in the esports startup world.
Awesome. So just for the sake of my watchers or listeners, or however it is that people are tuning into this broadcast, can you tell us a little bit about esports? I know some people are very familiar with it, and some people have never heard of it before.
Sure. Yeah. And listen, February last year, I didn't know about it either. I'd seen it like on the scroll, I think on ESPN. The way that I describe it when I'm telling people about it is it's competitive video games. And it's a very interesting industry. It's definitely gaining a lot of momentum, especially in the last 3 years. And now you have teams and leagues that are built out very similar to the traditional sports leagues that exist. And so this individual that I had met with had really encouraged me to just explore this space. I had told him I was interested in leadership and sports and technology. And he's like, oh, you should do esports, or you should look into this world. And so what I really did is I started networking, and I didn't know anybody in this world. So I really started to, follow people on Twitter, follow people on LinkedIn, cold emails, cold Twitter DMs. I mean, like just really kind of trying to get in with anybody I possibly could, just to learn about the space. I wasn't even trying to sell anything because I didn't know what I was going to sell. Right. Am I a coach? Am I like a GM? Do I work with the players? Like I didn't know. And so really just had a lot of coffee meetings trying to, see if my background fit. It was pretty evident from my meetings that my background did fit. It was just trying to get an understanding, like, am I working with players? Am I working with leadership? Do I work with the teams? It ended up leading me to working more with the leadership of the teams and the executives of the teams currently. So it's definitely challenging. I'm learning a lot, and I'm still learning. I mean, every single day when I go in there. One of the interesting aspects is I bring my traditional sports background, but esports, even though it's kind of built out with a similar structure to traditional sports, the people are totally different. You might be on a football team and you have a lot of alpha personalities, guys that, typically you can, as we say in coaching, get after. You can really kind of either yell at them or challenge them, and they're used to that. They've grown up in that world. Esports is a little different because you have these people that basically become really good in their homes, playing by themselves or playing online. And so the way that you do that is you're spending a lot of time playing typically by yourself, and you're not on a team and you don't have a coach holding you accountable. So there's a lot of interesting aspects that are occurring right now in the esports world, and particularly the professional sports of esports. And with new coaches, very young players that are making a ton of money. So you have all of these issues on top of the fact that none of these players predominantly have been on teams before. So, if you're a professional baseball player, you start playing when you're 6, 8, 10 years old, you're on teams. You're always on different teams. You have different coaches. So you've experienced different coaching styles. You've handled conflict with teammates. This is very new for esports because a lot of these players, before they become a part of a team, they're kind of by themselves, kind of working up their rankings. So I'm really enjoying the work I'm doing, working with the executives and the leaderships, kind of navigating a lot of these problems. And it's been a tremendous learning experience for me. It's just really fun, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it sounds super interesting. And, I was just in New York City this past week for the Professional Association of Athlete Development Specialists, and esports came up. So like you said, like this is a budding industry that, it's pretty cool that you are kind of on the end with it so early, because it does seem like it's going to be like, it's definitely on the uptick. Like people are getting real interested in this. And
no question. Yeah, and it's extremely accessible. And the way that I see it is I think children today will not delineate between traditional sports and esports. Esports will just become part of sports. You can even see this, like ESPN devotes like an entire section on their website to esports. You see it on the bottom scroll of ESPN. And not that saying that ESPN is like the one that determines whether this is a big deal, but obviously they're giving people what they want. There's huge numbers, kind of the biggest game in the space, League of Legends. I think had 60 or 90 million people watch their grand finals last year. And if you put that up against like all of the other sports or events that are on television, literally the Super Bowl is the only one that is like head and shoulders above it. I mean, there's more people that watch that final than the Oscars and that, the AFC championships and the NBA finals. And so it is just going to continue to grow, in my opinion. And so this is just a really interesting time, particularly living in Los Angeles, where a lot of these teams and companies are based, just to be around and meeting people. And that's one of the other aspects that's been really interesting, is meeting the people in esports. They've been extremely accommodating, extremely kind, especially to me, who I'm kind of like an outsider or was a year ago, and was just looking to learn. And the number of people that took the time to meet with me when it really had, probably very little benefit to do with them, I'm just extremely grateful for that. And I think that says a lot about the community that's being built, and that's going to continue to be built.
So interesting. So interesting. I have like a gazillion more questions about that, but I know we're at 1:30 and I know that we kind of set aside a half an hour for this. Is the whole community aspect, and like you were talking about team versus like playing at home, I'm so fascinated by all of that, how that all like the interaction with all of it. But maybe we can do that in another webinar.
Oh yeah.
Or interview. But so as we kind of close things out, I would just want to ask, I guess I have a couple of questions for you. The first is, like how can people get in touch with you, if they're interested in learning more about what you do, or professional, who knows, maybe somebody in the esports world is watching this. So what's the best way to get in contact with you? And then the other thing that I would have you I'm going to throw this out to you that just dawned on me that I don't know, that maybe I'm sure you'll be able to come up with an answer for it. It's just like any words of advice, or kind of like a mantra, or anything that you would like to kind of impart to anybody watching who may be in the period of kind of realizing that maybe they're in a different path, or on a path that maybe they want to switch, or like any words of guidance around like people who are in that space. So I guess the first question is, the contact info, and then the second question is the guidance for people who might be wanting to switch it up.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me on any social media platform at Coach Evan Burke, all one word. Burke is spelled B-U-R-K. Or you can find me on my website, coachevanburke.com, or email me at evan@coachevanburke.com. So those are the ways that you can contact me, find me. I think just in terms of any type of parting words or advice, my biggest thing would be to just focus on networking if you don't know what you want to do. So before I landed in esports, I had mentioned that I left my sales job. I had gone traveling and then come back to LA. Didn't know what I wanted to do. In my mind were things that I always was interested in, that I was like, oh, well, this is a perfect time to pursue this. So I'm talking like finance, real estate, just like a host of other things. Consulting was another thing that I was really looking into. So I was reaching out to people, just like asking them for coffee and career advice. So I always just ask for like a 15, 20-minute coffee to get advice and really just learn about them. And I have a good friend of mine that gave me some really good advice recently. And it was, just go into those meetings and try and learn as much as you can about those people. So, for instance, like real estate always interested me. I started reaching out to a bunch of people here, like where I live, and just asking for coffee. And probably did that for 3 or 4 weeks and set up a number of coffees. I probably went on a dozen or 15 different coffees and really would just sit down and like talk to them. Now, some people, they're going to give you 10 minutes and they're going to say, okay, Aaron, like, nice to meet you. Oh, it's Evan. Okay, all right. Yeah. Obviously that wasn't a positive interaction, but other people, I remember distinctly, I met with an individual about real estate. He told me before, and he's like, Evan, I only have 15 minutes. That's awesome. I'll drive to you. I'll come to your office, whatever. He ended up sitting in this coffee shop with me for 2.5 hours. Wow. And just kind of me asking him about his journey and kind of like, hey, what advice would you give me? What challenges did you experience? All this sort of stuff. Now, not everybody's going to do that. You probably have to reach out to, 50 or 100 people to find 5 or 10 people that are going to spend that time with you. But I always feel like you're looking for those people. So the people that ignore you, you're not really looking for those people. The people that spend 10 minutes with you or just like, hey, just email me your questions. You're not looking for those people. You're looking for the people that want to spend that time and want to help. And then obviously you'll be in a position, hopefully in the future, to pay it forward. So that was probably a little long-winded, but I would just really encourage people to like reach out and have as many coffees as you want. So for me, I did my four weeks of financial meetings. I decided, oh, that's not what I want to do. I did my 4 weeks of real estate meetings. I decided that's not what I wanted to do. Once I got into esports, I started meeting with people and I was like, oh, this is really fascinating. This might be what I want to do. People started inviting me to go to matches and to like meet them at their office and kind of like really opening their doors, explaining to me what was needed in the space and what was currently being done. And so that is really kind of my biggest piece of advice, just because I had so much success and failure with it. So I think that just regardless whether you decide you want to pursue real estate or not, I think that's always positive. So that would definitely be my suggestion to anybody that's going through kind of like a transition, is look at what you think you want and then go seek those people in that world and ultimately see like, okay, is this a true fit? And I think that would be kind of my number one piece of advice for anybody in that similar position.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, great advice. And I also, again, I just have to point out, because this is something that I just can't help but notice, is that you were persistent. And like you're saying, like those people that are not willing to meet with me, they're not my people. The
Yeah,
people that are, saying, email me your questions, not my people. Like you're not taking it personally. You're not letting it get in the way of you continuing to get some clarity or move down the path towards clarity. And I just think that's so powerful, because so many of us could be easily derailed by um, people aren't calling me back or not returning my emails or whatever. And if you just think of it as like, well, those aren't my people, and I'm aligning with the people who are going to help me get into more of a path for my dream, and for my next level vision, even if I'm not sure what that is yet. So
100%. Yeah. And it wasn't always like I was just good to go. I mean, there was
yeah, no,
plenty of moments of, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Nobody's responding to me.
of
So
course,
we
yeah.
all go through that,
Yes, I think that's an important thing to acknowledge too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not all just like easy, like, oh, who cares? Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm going to end the broadcast here so that, we do have a recording of this too. I think you can watch it on Facebook Live, but I'm going to be sending Evan the recording so he'll have it. And I just wanted to say, Evan, thank you so much for your time and for your willingness to share your
Thank you.
path and your journey, and so many great teaching nuggets in your story. So I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share. I know it gets a little long-winded at times, but this was fun. So thank you so much.
Good. Well, yeah, we'll have to definitely do something else, because like I said, I've got more questions for you. So, and I know we're collaborating on other things. So this might be one of a couple of different interviews. So,
Love it. Love it. I'm in.
all right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and have a great Monday.
Thank you,
Bye.
Erica. Bye.
Evan.